Charles Kinsley, a mental health therapist, was shot by police in North Miami, Florida. He was working with his patient who is autistic. He was shot multiple times while laying on the ground with his hands in the air. His crime? Being black. Trayvon Martin was shot and killed by a civilian while walking home with iced tea and Skittles for wearing a hoodie. Civilian was found not guilty. Keith Scott was shot and killed by a police officer while reading in his car. The officer was not charged. Atatiana Jefferson was shot and killed by a police officer while looking out her window. The officer is still under indictment for murder. Jonathan Farrell was shot 12 times by police while asking for help after an auto accident. This case ended in mistrial. Jordan Edwards was shot and killed by police while riding in a car when he was 15 years old. The officer was found not guilty. Jordan Edwards was shot and killed by a police officer while riding in the car when he was 15 years old. The officer was found guilty of murder. Stephen Clark was shot 8 times, 6 in the back, while holding a cell phone in his grandparents' backyard. The officers were not charged. Amadou Diallo was shot and killed while taking out his wallet. 4 officers had fired 41 shots. All were acquitted. Rashina McBride was shot and killed while asking for help after an auto accident. When she knocked on the door for help, the homeowner was found guilty of second-degree murder. Tamir Rice was shot and killed by an officer while playing with a toy gun when he was 12 years old. The officer was not charged. Sean Bell was shot and killed while hosting a bachelor party. In all, 50 rounds were fired by police officers. They were found not guilty of all charges. Walter Scott was shot in the back 5 times by police officers who pleaded guilty to civil rights violations. Philando Castile was shot while pulled over in his car with his girlfriend and his young daughter in the back seat. He informed the officer he had a legally registered weapon in the car, and the officer shot him to death. The officer was acquitted of all charges. Ayanna Jones. While sleeping, she was accidentally shot by an officer in a raid on the wrong apartment. She was 7 years old. The officer was cleared of all charges. Terrence Crutcher, shot by a police officer while his car was stalled in the middle of the street. The officer was found not guilty of manslaughter. Alton Sterling, while being arrested for selling CDs, he is shot at close range by police. No charges filed. Freddie Gray was beaten to death by police officers during his transportation in a police van. All officers involved were acquitted. John Crawford, shot by police while shopping at Walmart holding a BB gun that was on sale. The officer was not charged. Michael Brown was shot 12 times by an officer, including in the back. No charges filed. Jordan Davis was shot and killed because he was playing loud music. Shooter found guilty of first-degree murder. Sandra Bland, after being pulled over for a traffic ticket, she was tasered and arrested. Later, she died of a suspicious suicide while in jail. No charges have been filed. Bottom Jean. A police officer mistook his home for hers and shot him to death. The officer found guilty of murder. Oscar Grant, while handcuffed and face down, an officer shot him in the back. The officer was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Corey Jones, while by his disabled vehicle, he was shot 3 times by a police officer. The officer was found guilty of murder. Ahmaud Arbery, shot while jogging in a neighborhood for being suspected of burglaries. 3 men charged with murder and aggravated assault. George Floyd was suffocated while handcuffed by a police officer who used his knee to restrain him by the neck after being accused of paying with a counterfeit $20 bill. No charges yet. Update. Officer just taken into custody. Breonna Taylor, shot 8 times by the police as they raided her apartment by mistake. Charges were brought against her boyfriend for attempted murder because because he shot back. These are being dropped. Investigation still ongoing. No charges have been filed against the police. Eric Gardner, suffocated by police when placed in a chokehold after being stopped for selling untaxed cigarettes. He died pleading, "I can't breathe." Officer was fired. Laquan McDonald, shot in the back 16 times by a police officer when he was 17 years old. 4 years later, the officer is found guilty of second-degree murder and 16 counts of aggravated battery. He is found not guilty of official misconduct. Wake up. Stay tuned.